Allow me to tell you a story. Some stories are born from imagination. Others feel so real that, even years later, people still argue about what truly happened. Whether this story is fact or fiction, I'll leave that for you to decide. All I ask is that you stay with me until the very end. I grew up at the end of a long dirt road, in a tiny farming town. Somewhere in rural Kansas, there was an old wooden house, falling apart, with peeling white paint, and a porch that creaked with every step. To everyone else, it was just another forgotten home. To me, it was hell. Even now, years later, when the house only exists in my memories, I can still hear my mother's screams. My father, Victor, worked long days on nearby farms. He was a strong man, a hard-working man, but every dollar he earned ended up at the same roadside bar. By the time he came home, the alcohol had already turned him into someone else, someone I barely recognized. Every night, the shouting began. Then came the sound of breaking dishes, furniture crashing, my mother's crying. I would hide in the corner of my room, covering my ears, praying it would end. Sometimes, she would run to me, wrap both arms around my small body, shield me with hers. It's okay, Ethan. I've got you. But it wasn't okay, It never was. I can't remember my mother without bruises, without swollen eyes, without tears. One night, my father stumbled into the house, pointed directly at me, and shouted, "He's not my son. You've been lying to me for years." My mother pulled me behind her. "Victor, Ethan is your son. I've never betrayed you. Just look at him. He looks exactly like you." But jealousy had poisoned his heart long before alcohol ever did. He grabbed a chair, threw it across the kitchen, then pointed toward the front door. "Get out, both of you. I never want to see either of you again." My mother didn't argue. She simply took my hand, opened the door, and together, we stepped into the cold night. There was only one place we could go. Mrs. Harper's house, our elderly neighbor. She never asked questions. She simply opened the door, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and let us inside. That night, while I lay beside my mother, I heard her whisper something, so quietly, I almost missed it. "He's your father." That promised me one thing: never become the man he is. That night, after my father finally passed out, my mother stayed awake. So did I. Neither of us could sleep. Rain tapped softly against Mrs. Harper's windows. The room was silent, except for my mother's quiet sobs. I was only 8 years old, but I already knew she was carrying a pain far bigger than anything I could understand. She gently brushed my hair back and smiled through her tears. "There are things I've never told you." I looked at her. She stared out the window, as if the answers were hidden somewhere in the darkness. "I've known your father since we were children. We grew up together. He was always kind to me. He protected me. And one day, he fell in love with me." She paused, "But I didn't love him. I cared about him. I respected him. But my heart belonged to someone else. A young engineer from Kansas City." She smiled sadly, remembering a life that no longer existed. "I married him. I truly believed I had found my future." Her smile disappeared. But only 2 months later, he left me for another woman. I came back home with nothing except a broken heart. She looked down at her hands. "I thought maybe your father and I could build a peaceful life together. He had always loved me. I believed he would take care of me. And for a while, he did." Everything changed the day I was born. When you arrived, something inside Victor broke. He looked at you and immediately said, "You weren't his son." No matter how many times I told him the truth, he refused to believe me. He convinced himself that you belong to my first husband. I felt my stomach tighten. But I am his son, I whispered. She cupped my face and looked straight into my eyes. Yes, you are, and none of this is your fault. She kissed my forehead, then she held me close, as if she wanted to protect me from a future she already feared. Outside, the storm finally ended, but inside our family, it had only just begun. Life didn't get better. It only became quieter. My father still drank every single day, but as I grew older, he hit my mother less. Not because he had changed, because I was getting stronger. He knew I would fight back. Instead, he sat in his old chair, a bottle of whiskey beside him, watching us with cold, empty eyes. My mother looked older every year. She was only in her 30s, but the years of fear had stolen her smile. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. Her hands trembled. Sometimes, she coughed for minutes, pretending she was fine. One evening, I sat beside her on the porch. The sun was setting over the cornfields. I took her hand. It felt so small, so fragile. I won't let us stay here forever. She looked at me. As soon as I finish school, I'll find a job. We'll leave this place. I promise, for the first time in weeks. She smiled. A real smile. I know you will, Ethan. You've always been different. You've never given up. She squeezed my hand. My mother never forgave me when I married your father. She closed her door forever. If she had welcomed us, we could have escaped years ago. She lowered her eyes. But I don't regret having you. Never. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Tears filled my eyes. I'll buy you a beautiful house. A safe one. No more fear. No more shouting. No more tears. She gently touched my cheek. You don't have to give me a mansion. I only want one thing. What? She smiled again. I want to see you happy. And I want you to become the kind of man your father never could. I nodded. I promise. From that day on, I worked harder than ever. After school, I repaired tractors, combines, old farm equipment, anything that had an engine. People across the county started asking for me by name. I saved every dollar. Every dream I had was for one purpose: to take my mother away from the only nightmare she had ever known. I believed our new life was finally within reach. I had no idea that fate had already planned something far worse. I graduated from high school. My mother cried when she held my diploma, not because it was just a piece of paper, because to her, it meant hope. It meant our escape. That summer, I worked harder than ever. Everyone in the county knew. If a tractor or a combine broke down, Ethan could fix it. I left before sunrise. Sometimes, I didn't come home until after dark. Every paycheck went into a small metal box, hidden beneath my bed. It was our future. One evening, I was repairing a combine on a farm several miles from home. The sun had already disappeared. I packed my tools, wiped the grease from my hands, and started walking toward my truck. That's when I heard someone calling my name. Ethan. I turned around. It was Peter, our neighbor. He was running toward me, completely out of breath. His face was white. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He stopped in front of me, trying to speak. Ethan, it's your mum. My heart stopped. What happened? He couldn't look me in the eyes. Then, he whispered the words that destroyed my life. Victor killed her. For a second, I heard nothing. No wind, no insects, no voices, just silence. You're lying. Peter shook his head. I'm so sorry. I dropped my toolbox and ran, faster than I had ever run before. Please, let him be wrong. Please let her still be alive. Please. When I reached our road, I saw flashing red and blue lights, police cars, an ambulance, people standing outside, whispering. Mrs. Harper saw me first. She covered her mouth and began to cry. I already knew, before anyone said another word. I knew. I tried to run toward the house. 2 police officers stopped me. I'm sorry, son. We couldn't save her. My knees gave out. I collapsed. Right there. In the dirt, everything my mother had dreamed about was gone. Our little house, our plans, our promises, gone. They led my father away. In handcuffs, he never looked at me, not once. That night, I buried my childhood. Long before, we buried my mother. After my mother's funeral, I couldn't stay there anymore. Every road, every room, every corner of that old house reminded me of her and of him. So I left. I packed everything I owned into the back of an old pickup truck. There wasn't much. A toolbox, a few clothes, some books, and 1 framed photograph of my mother smiling. The only picture where she truly looked happy. I drove 3 hours east to Wichita. I wanted a place where nobody knew my name, where nobody would whisper, "There goes the son of a murderer." I rented a tiny room above an old hardware store. It wasn't much. The walls were cracked. The bed squeaked. The kitchen was barely big enough for 1 person. But it was quiet. For the first time in my life, I could sleep without hearing screaming, without broken glass, without fear. I found work at a local auto repair shop. The owner, Samuel, was loud, friendly, and always smiling. On my first day, he watched me rebuild an engine. He crossed his arms and nodded. "Where did you learn to do that?" "On farms," I answered. He laughed. "Well, you just saved me 2 days of work." Within a week, he doubled my responsibilities. Within a month, I was fixing jobs other mechanics couldn't. Samuel trusted me. The customers trusted me. Life was finally moving forward. There was only one thing I never shared: my past. Whenever someone asked about my parents, I simply said, "They're gone." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth. I buried the rest deep inside me. Every evening, after work, I went back to my room, made dinner, read engineering books, sketched ideas for tools that could make mechanics' jobs easier. I still dreamed of building something meaningful, maybe one day opening my own shop. But no matter how busy I kept myself, one feeling never disappeared: loneliness. Until one summer morning, when Samuel walked into the shop, holding a cup of coffee, with a huge smile on his face. "Ethan, I've got a job for you. My brother's combine broke down. And trust me, you're going to love his farm." I had no idea that one repair job was about to change the rest of my life. The next morning, Samuel and I drove to his brother's farm. It sat just outside a small town, surrounded by endless wheat fields. The place was enormous. Barns, tractors, harvesters, equipment everywhere. For someone who loved machines, it felt like paradise. Samuel's older brother, Daniel, walked toward us, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You must be Ethan. I've heard a lot about you." He smiled. "If anyone can save my combine, it's you." "I'll do my best." I climbed inside the machine. Within minutes, I knew this wasn't going to be a quick repair. The transmission was badly damaged. It would take At least 2 days. I crawled back out, covered in grease. Just as I reached for my toolbox, I heard a soft voice behind me. Hi. I turned around. A young woman stood a few feet away. She carried a tray with iced lemonade and fresh sandwiches. She smiled. I'm Grace, Daniel's daughter. I figured you might be hungry. For a moment, I forgot how to speak. She had warm brown eyes, long dark hair, moving gently in the summer breeze. She wasn't dressed to impress anyone. Simple jeans, a light blue shirt, no expensive jewelry, no makeup, just beautiful. You didn't have to do this, I finally managed to say. She laughed softly. My dad says nobody should work on an empty stomach. I smiled. Something I hadn't done naturally in a very long time. She handed me the lemonade. Our fingers brushed for only a second, yet somehow my heart forgot how to beat. We sat together under the shade of an old oak tree. She asked about engines.com, about machines, about why I enjoyed fixing things. Nobody had ever asked me that before. Most people only cared whether something worked. Grace wanted to know why I loved making it work again. I guess I like giving broken things a second chance. She looked at me for a little longer than before. Maybe people deserve that too. Her words stayed with me long after our conversation ended. As we stood up, Samuel and Daniel walked over. Samuel looked at me, then at Grace.com. A slow grin spread across his face. Well, I haven't seen Ethan smile since the day he started working for me. Daniel laughed.com. Looks like my daughter has a special talent. I felt my face grow warm. Grace looked down, trying to hide her smile. For the first time since losing my mother, the darkness inside me felt just a little lighter. That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about Grace, her smile, her kindness, the way she looked at me without judgment. It scared me, not because of her, because of me. On the drive back, Samuel wouldn't stop smiling. So, Grace seems to like you. I kept my eyes on the road. We just talked. He laughed.com. Son, I've known my niece her whole life. I know that look. I didn't answer. What could I say? How could I explain that I wanted to run before my heart got involved? That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grace's face, then my mother's, then my father's. One memory always erased the other. The next morning, we returned to the farm. Grace was already outside. She waved. I nodded politely and walked straight to the combine. No smile, no conversation, nothing. I buried myself in work. An hour later, I heard footsteps behind me. Ethan? I didn't turn around. Is something wrong? I tightened another bolt.com. No, you don't seem okay. I'm just busy. Silence. Then she stepped closer. Did I do something? Finally, I looked at her. Her eyes were full of confusion. No, you didn't. Then why are you avoiding me? Because I don't deserve you. The words stayed trapped inside my chest. Instead, I forced a cold smile. I think it's better if we keep things professional. She stared at me, unable to understand. We had such a nice conversation yesterday. I thought we became friends. We barely know each other. I replied. The moment those words left my mouth, I regretted them. Grace lowered her eyes. I understand. She turned around and quietly walked away. I watched her leave. Every step felt like someone was tearing my heart apart. I wanted to run after her, to apologize, to tell her the truth, that I wasn't afraid of loving her. I was afraid she would one day discover who my father was and hate me for a crime I never committed. I picked up my wrench, but for the first time, I couldn't remember what I had been fixing. My hands were working, my mind was somewhere else, and my heart was breaking all over again. The repair was finally finished. The combine roared back to life. Daniel smiled. I knew Samuel was right. You're the best mechanic I've ever seen. I thanked him quietly, packed my tools, and prepared to leave. I wanted to disappear before I saw Grace again, but fate had other plans. As I walked toward my truck, I heard footsteps behind me. Ethan. I stopped. It was Grace. She stood there, holding her car keys. I don't believe you. I frowned. What do you mean? You weren't avoiding me because of work. She stepped closer. You're hiding from something. I looked away. She deserved the truth, but the truth had destroyed everything. My entire life. I don't want to hurt you, I whispered. She smiled sadly. You already are. Those words hit harder than anything my father had ever done. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The summer wind moved through the wheat fields. Finally, I took a deep breath. My father killed my mother. Grace froze. I continued, before fear could silence me again. He spent his life drunk. He beat her for as long as I can remember. Then one night, he murdered her. She covered her mouth. I couldn't stop anymore. I watched my mother suffer. My entire childhood. My father died in prison. I changed towns. I changed my life. But I can never change whose blood runs through my veins. A tear rolled down my cheek. I've spent years believing I don't deserve to love anyone. I was afraid that if you knew, you'd look at me the way everyone else would. Grace slowly walked toward me. She didn't speak. She simply reached for my hand. Her fingers wrapped around mine. Warm, gentle, steady. She looked directly into my eyes. Ethan, you are not your father. You never were. What he did will never define you. I closed my eyes. For years, I had carried those words like chains around my heart. And in one quiet moment, Grace broke every single one of them. Without thinking, I pulled her into my arms. She held me just as tightly. For the first time since losing my mother, I didn't feel alone anymore. For the first time, I believed my future might be different from my past. Grace never let go of my hand, not even for a second. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I wish I could have met your mother. I smiled sadly. You would have loved her. She was the kindest person I've ever known. Grace squeezed my hand. I think she would have loved you too. A small laugh escaped me. I hope so. We stood there, watching the wheat sway under the afternoon sun. For the first time, silence didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. The weeks passed, then months. I kept coming back to Daniel's farm, sometimes to repair equipment, sometimes just because Samuel found another excuse. My brother needs help. The tractor sounds strange. The truck won't start. I soon realized half of those repairs weren't even necessary. Samuel only smiled. I like having you around. I suspected he was trying to bring Grace and me together. Maybe he was. Grace and I became friends, real friends. We talked for hours about books, about dreams, about life. She never asked me to forget my past. She simply reminded me that I deserved a future. Little by little, I began smiling again, laughing again, living again. One evening, we sat on the old porch, watching the sunset. Ethan, can I ask you something? Of course. Why do you love fixing machines so much? I smiled. Because machines can be repaired. She tilted her head. And people? I looked at her. They're harder, but sometimes all they need is someone who refuses to give up on them. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She reached for my hand. I'm glad I didn't give up on you. I looked at her for what felt like forever. Then, before fear could stop me, I gently kissed her. She smiled and kissed me back. It wasn't just my first real kiss. It was the first moment I truly believed my mother's dream might finally come true. Maybe I really could become the man she always hoped I would be. Our lives changed slowly. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic speeches, just quiet moments that meant everything. Grace became the reason I looked forward to every new day. Whenever work brought me to Daniel's farm, she was there, waiting with lemonade or coffee, sometimes with homemade pie. Other times, she simply sat beside me while I worked. She never complained that I spent hours covered in grease. She said she loved watching me do what I loved. One evening, Daniel invited me to stay for dinner. We ate outside, beneath the old oak tree, the same tree where Grace and I had shared our first real conversation. After dinner, Samuel cleared his throat. So, when are you two going to admit you're in love? Grace burst into laughter. I nearly choked on my iced tea. Daniel smiled. I've been waiting for someone like you to come into my daughter's life. I looked down. There are things you don't know about me, Daniel gently interrupted. I know enough. Samuel had told him everything about my childhood, about my mother, about my father. I froze. Daniel stood up, walked over, and placed a hand on my shoulder. Listen to me, Ethan. You'll never answer for another man's sins, not while I'm alive. Those words hit me harder than anything else I had ever heard. For years, I believed I carried my father's shame. Daniel took that burden off my shoulders with a single sentence. As the sun disappeared behind the fields, Grace took my hand. We walked away from the house, away from everyone, until we reached the old oak tree. She stopped, looked into my eyes. I've never told you this. The first day I saw you, working on Dad's combine, I couldn't stop looking at you. I laughed softly. I noticed. She smiled. No, I don't think you did. She stepped closer. I wasn't looking because you were handsome. I was looking because you looked like someone carrying the weight of the world. A tear rolled down my cheek. I wanted to help carry it. I wrapped my arms around her. I don't know what I did to deserve you. She rested her head against my chest. You don't have to deserve love. You only have to accept it. Standing beneath that old oak tree, I silently thanked my mother for raising me to become the man she always believed I could be. A year passed, then another. Life finally became everything my mother had always hoped it would be. I was promoted to head mechanic. The shop became busier than ever. Customers came from neighboring counties, asking specifically for me. Samuel smiled every time. I told you, people recognize talent. I worked hard, not because I wanted more money, but because hard work was the only thing I had ever trusted. Grace had finished college. She started working at the local elementary school. The children adored her. Whenever she came home, she had another funny story to tell. Watching her laugh became my favorite part of every day. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel invited us to the farm again. The old oak tree was still standing, exactly where it had always been. Grace smiled. You know, this tree changed my life. It changed mine too, I answered. She looked at me. What are you thinking? I reached into my jacket pocket. My heart was beating so loudly, I thought she could hear it. I dropped to one knee. Grace's eyes widened. She covered her mouth. I don't have a perfect past. I never will. But I promise you a peaceful future. I promise you'll never know fear inside our home. I promise our children will grow up hearing laughter instead of screams. And I promise to love you for the rest of my life. I opened the small box. Inside was a simple diamond ring. Not the biggest, not the most expensive, but bought with honest work, with honest love. Tears rolled down Grace's cheeks. Yes, she whispered, then laughed through her tears. Of course, yes. I slipped the ring onto her finger. She threw her arms around me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We simply stood there, holding each other beneath the old oak tree, the same place where hope had first returned to my life. In that moment, I looked toward the sky and quietly whispered, I did it, Mom. We made it. 6 months later, Grace became my wife. It wasn't a huge wedding. We didn't need one. Only the people who truly loved us stood beside us. Samuel was my best man. Daniel walked Grace down the aisle. When I saw her in her wedding dress, I forgot how to breathe. She smiled, the same smile that had saved me years earlier. Our first home wasn't a mansion. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Every wall held peace. Every room held laughter. There were no slammed doors, no broken dishes, no drunken shouting. In the middle of the night, sometimes I would wake up suddenly, after dreaming about my childhood. Grace would quietly hold my hand. You're home. You're safe. Those 3 words always calmed me. A year after our wedding, Grace came home, holding something behind her back. I have a surprise. She handed me a small envelope. I opened it. For a few seconds, I couldn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw the words. Positive. I looked up. My hands were shaking. Grace. She nodded, with tears in her eyes. We're having a baby. I couldn't speak. Instead, I wrapped my arms around her and cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from gratitude, from joy. Everything my mother had dreamed about was finally happening. 9 months later, our son was born. The first time I held him, I made a promise. The same promise I had made as a frightened little boy. You will never know fear inside your own home. You will never wonder if your father loves you. You will never hear the words I heard. You will always know you are enough. Grace stood beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. You already are the father you always wished you had. I looked down at my son, then toward the hospital window, where the morning sun was rising. Somewhere, I hoped my mother was smiling, because the cycle ended with me, and love finally won. Life moved on. Years passed. Our son grew quickly. Then, our daughter was born. Our home was everything my childhood never was. Warm, safe, filled with laughter. Sometimes, I would stop, just to listen, not to shouting, not to crying, only to my children's laughter. Every single time, I silently thanked God. One autumn morning, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? A woman's voice answered. Is this Ethan Walker? Yes, I'm calling from State Correctional Records. My heart stopped. There is something you should know. I closed my eyes. Even before she spoke, I somehow knew. Your father, Victor, passed away this morning. Silence. No tears. No anger. Nothing. Only silence. She explained. There would be no funeral. No relatives had come forward. His few belongings would be discarded unless I claimed them. I understand, I quietly replied. That evening, I sat alone on the porch. Grace walked outside and placed a blanket over my shoulders. You don't have to go, she said gently. I know, but I think I need to. 2 days later, I stood inside a small prison office. An old cardboard box sat on the desk. Everything my father owned fit inside it. A worn-out wallet, an old watch, a faded photograph, and one unopened letter. It had my name on it. Ethan. My hands began to shake. The prison officer looked at me. He wrote it. A few weeks before he died, he asked us to give it to you. I stared at the envelope. For nearly 20 years, I had dreamed of hearing something, anything, from the man who had destroyed our family. I slowly opened it and began to read. I unfolded the letter. Slowly. The paper was worn, the handwriting unsteady, as if every word had been difficult to write. I took a deep breath and began reading. Ethan, I don't know if you'll ever read this, and if you do, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Not after everything I did to you, or to your mother. For years, I blamed her. I blamed you. I blamed everyone, except myself. Alcohol didn't make me the man I became. It only revealed the monster I had allowed to grow inside me. Your mother never betrayed me. I knew that. Deep down, I always knew. You were my son. You always were. But I was too proud, too broken, too consumed by jealousy to admit it. Every time I looked at you, I saw the life I believed had been stolen from me. Instead of loving you, I punished you for my own failures. The night I killed your mother, I wasn't thinking. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was empty. When I realized what I had done, it was already too late. I took away the only person who had ever loved me. Prison gave me something I had never allowed myself before. Time to think, time to remember, time to hate the man I have become. I heard through the chaplain that you became a mechanic, that you're respected, that you built an honest life. I cried when he told me, not because I deserved to be proud, but because, despite everything I did, you became a better man than I ever was. If there's one thing I ask of you, it's this. Don't let my sins live inside you. Don't spend your life running from my shadow. Be the husband I never was. Be the father I refuse to become. Love your family. Protect them. And if one day you think of me, don't remember the man who destroyed everything. Remember me as a warning of what hate can do to a human heart. I'm sorry, Anna. I'm sorry. Ethan, goodbye. Dad, the letter slipped from my hands. For a long time, I simply sat there, unable to move, unable to speak. For the first time, my father had told me the truth, that it had come far too late. I folded the letter and placed it back inside the envelope. For years, I had imagined what I would say if I ever saw my father again. I imagined anger, hatred, questions. Instead, I felt peace, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I no longer carried his burden. His choices were never mine. I walked outside the prison. The autumn air felt colder than before. I looked up at the grey sky. Mom, I whispered. You were right. I became a different man. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. For a brief moment, I almost felt as if she was standing beside me, smiling, the same gentle smile I remembered from my childhood. When I arrived home, Grace opened the front door. She didn't ask what the letter said. She simply hugged me, long enough for every painful memory to lose its strength. Our son ran toward me. Dad, he wrapped his little arms around my legs. Our daughter followed behind him. Can we play outside? I smiled. Of course. For the next hour, we laughed, played catch, ran through the yard. I watched my children laughing, without fear, without pain, without wondering if they were loved. And I realized this was everything my mother had dreamed about. That evening, after the children were asleep, Grace found me sitting on the porch. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. I looked toward the stars. My mother. I wish she could see this. Grace rested her head on my shoulder. I think she can. I smiled. Maybe she was right. Because somehow, deep inside, I felt that Anna had never really left me. She had lived on through every choice I made, every kind word, every hug, every promise I kept. People often ask me how someone raised in so much violence could build such a peaceful family. The answer is simple. I remembered every tear my mother cried, and I made one decision a long time ago. The pain would end with me. If my story can teach you anything, let it be this. Your past does not decide your future. Someone else's sins do not become yours. No matter where you come from, you can choose who you become. And sometimes one choice is enough to change every generation that comes after you. Thank you for listening to Ethan's story. Sometimes, the people who grow up in the darkest homes become the ones who create the brightest families. Your past does not define your future. Your parents' mistakes do not have to become your own, no matter where you come from. You always have a choice to forgive, to heal, to love, and to break the cycle. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful stories like this to life. Thank you for being here. God bless you. And I'll see you in the next story.